Thank you very much, friends. I'm delighted to welcome you to this panel discussion, and I thank you and admire you for lasting the course until this evening. I believe there is a sumptuous dinner also that's going to be served a little later on. Friends, just a couple of house rules. Firstly, please do keep your mobile phones on, but put them on silent. We'd love you to comment via Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, so please do tweet away. The hashtags that will be circulated or have been circulated. And this is an interactive session, so at some point I will be opening up the floor to you to intervene and ask questions, and I can see so many friends and very distinguished people in the room, so feel free to put your hand up and participate in this panel discussion. Firstly, I thought I'd just set the scene very briefly. Friends, the Commonwealth consists of 52 vastly diverse countries, diverse geographically, diverse politically, diverse economically, and diverse culturally as well. They're tied together by our shared history, the prevalent use of the English language, and a common or familiar legal system. In recent years, the Commonwealth has started to emerge as an interesting, let's put it that way, trading association. In 2003, intra-Commonwealth trade was approximately $266 billion. That steadily moved up to a couple of years ago to close to $6 billion US dollars. And a recent projection is that by around 2020, intra-Commonwealth trade will be close to $1 trillion. However, friends, despite the establishment of some unique institutions and associations and reasonable trading links, organizations like the biannual Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, the Commonwealth Business Forum, the Commonwealth Games, the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, and the Commonwealth Journalists Association that have helped keep the flag of the Commonwealth alive. And despite some compelling reasons that the Commonwealth remains a strong potential force for economic progress and general human good in our world during these turbulent times, I think that it's fair to say that the crossroads, that it's reached a crossroads in its existence. So friends, this evening we will explore whether and how the Commonwealth can recast and recenter itself as an organization that takes the lead on economic as well as normative issues and serves as a template for partnership and collaboration in the world at large. In short, friends, can the Commonwealth reimagine itself for the 21st century? And this panel is especially timely, given that we are only a few weeks away from the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in London. So I'm delighted that joining me, we have an excellent panel, all of whom I'm sure will have some very, very interesting perspectives on the future of the Commonwealth. So without further ado, I'd like to start off by inviting His Excellency Abul Hassan Muhammad Ali, the Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs of Bangladesh, to deliver his opening remarks. Your Excellency.
Mr. Manoj Ladwa, distinguished panelists, excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. It's indeed a pleasure for me to be amongst you this evening and share our thoughts and exchange views on a Commonwealth that we would like to see in the 21st century. For that, let me first thank the organizers of the program. The title of the panel, Reimagining the Commonwealth for the 21st Century, brought for our discussion in our run-up to the forthcoming CHOGM in London, carries great significance and is very pertinent and timely. It suggests that time has come when we have to rethink and review our organization so as to enable it to meet the needs, challenges, and aspirations of its citizenry in this post-Brexit era. I would like to make a few points here. First, Commonwealth has to evolve and come up with the priorities along the expectations of its member states, mostly developing ones. It can no longer remain simply an association of free states emerging out of the British Empire system and then a club of the dominions. Commonwealth must graduate into an organization with will and wherewithal to meet the evolving needs of its member states through collective initiatives. Second, Commonwealth must increasingly be connected within itself if it wants to remain relevant to its citizenry and foster its values in commonality. Third, Commonwealth must reinvent its strength and enormous possibilities, creative and productive, and build for the future generations a fairer future, a more prosperous future, a more sustainable future, and a more secure future as conceived under the broader 2018 CHOGM theme towards a common future. Fourth, Commonwealth should show the way by setting example rather than preach, for values, political or development grow organically and cannot be imposed on a society. That should be nurtured to instill the sense of belongingness to Commonwealth. Fifth, Commonwealth must welcome and bring in greater role of the private sector in its programs. Excellencies, we are thus thinking of a Commonwealth of tomorrow when the forthcoming CHOGM is generating a lot of interest and expectations about Commonwealth's reform and relaunch. Commonwealth's present state in the context of Brexit are prompting us to explore new possibilities and think how to transform the organization and make it more responsive to the evolving international realities and the needs and expectations of the majority of its developing member states. The world has changed, historical context has changed, and the member states' role in value of and expectations from the Commonwealth have also undergone evolution. But the approach, priorities, and orientations of the Commonwealth have not. It is therefore time that we made efforts to transform it. What does this relaunch mean to us? It means fundamental change in the structure and orientation of the organization, readjustment of the role and function of its bodies and mode of work, along with a redesigning of its strategies and priorities to enhance Commonwealth's relevance and value to member states and peoples. We are happy that this has started in a small scale with the restructuring of the Commonwealth Secretariat undertaken by Secretary General Right Honourable Patricia Scotland. Restructuring of Commonwealth may include creation of new bodies and mechanisms and reorganizing old ones, developing a Commonwealth Development Fund or a bank, to mention one. Readjustment of role may include, for example, establishing the CPA, Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, in its role of upholding, protecting, and promoting political values of the Commonwealth and enhancing Commonwealth relevance to the people in the grassroots. We may look for new partnerships or alliances and make the best out of Commonwealth accredited organizations, relevant civil society organizations, and the private sector. There can be professional and sectoral associations across the Commonwealth for study, survey, sectoral master plans with appropriate plan of action under strategic financing initiatives and technology transfer support. We therefore consider it useful to have an eminent persons group to deliberate and come up with recommendations for reforms, as in the recent past, an eminent persons group helped us having a Commonwealth Charter in 2013. Friends, the Commonwealth Charter adopted has brought two sets of values, political and development values. We are emphasizing on a fine balance of the two, but we have not perhaps brought development values to equal focus in practical and outcome terms and explored our synergies and Commonwealth partnership for SDGs. But what does development focus mean? It means concentrating mainly on growth and development, aid for trade, market access, and trade and investment with the reduction of aid dependence. It means capacity building, HRD and employment, and better and quality services to the people. Commonwealth can therefore do its best in facilitating preferential and free trade arrangements. On vulnerability issues, it means enhancing resilience for vulnerable countries like Bangladesh with assistance, capacity building, expertise, and technology transfer support for their climate adaptation and mitigation projects. It means youth development, investing in youth and women, encouraging them for healthy competition of science and technology, entrepreneurship, sports, culture, and all sorts of creative pursuits. Bangladesh reimagines a Commonwealth that would promote drivers of development such as regular migration, R&D, and incubation, good governance, infrastructure and connectivity projects, women's empowerment, and more. Bangladesh expects Commonwealth to intensify its work in the areas of human security, ocean economy, and other niche areas of education, health, conservation, and development of sustainable resources. Commonwealth should add its value in forming global opinion, giving pioneering leadership in thoughts, and setting examples for the rest of the globe to follow. Its role is in institution building, and value is in facilitating development. Its strength is in the unity in diversity and supporting equity. I hope the next CHOGM would take some of our concerns into serious consideration. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for that, those excellent opening remarks, and indeed signposting many of the issues that face the Commonwealth as it looks to move forward. I'd like to now very briefly introduce our eminent panelists. Firstly, ladies first, Gay Ruth Konyongolo. She's a senior lecturer in law at Chancellor College, the University of Malawi. Next to her is His Excellency Premdut Koonjoo, Minister of Ocean Economy, Marine Resources, Fisheries and Shipping from the Republic of Mauritius. Swapan Dasgupta, who's a distinguished writer and political commentator and a member of the Rajya Sabha, that's the upper house in the Indian Parliament. And Tim Hitchens, the Chief Executive of the Commonwealth Summit, and somebody who's looking extremely relaxed with the summit only a few days away now. So without further ado, I'll just wait till this service finishes, and I'm going to ask Tim to make some opening remarks.
Thank you very much indeed, Manoj, and it's great to be allowed to be here as part of the dialogue. This is my third visit to New Delhi in the course of 6 months, and I think that probably says something about the importance of India and its role in the summit coming. Last weekend was 100 days towards the summit, and I think that any of you who've organised big events will know that rush of blood when you realise it is actually going to happen. But I think you'll find that as member states, we are well prepared. And for the last 12 months, I've been travelling around the Commonwealth, asking people precisely the question that is up behind us. What is the great challenge? What is the great transition that we are going through that we need to address? And a number of points have come back, and I'm very happy to take these in more detail as we go through. But the first, people say that the Commonwealth had a very clear role in the 20th century. It was there to help countries gain their independence, to build a relationship with the UK, but as important and over time more important, to build relations with each other. And it was India that had the brilliant insight that you could be a member of the Commonwealth, and you could be independent, and you could have your own head of state, and yet you chose to have the British Crown as head of the Commonwealth. And that loose association was a brilliant way of conceiving the role for the 20th century. I think it's fair to say that that process has worked itself through, and the challenges we now face as 52 member states are a different set of challenges. The Foreign Minister has set out very clearly some of the work that we've been doing in the preparation for the summit, some of the key themes that have emerged from it. But just to pick up 3 points that go particularly to the disruptive transitions point, and I very much like the fact that Foreign Secretary Jai Shankar in a previous session this afternoon said that disruptive transitions aren't necessarily a bad thing. There can be some very good disruptive transitions, even if you're not the owner of one of our sponsors, Uber. That transition and disruption can be a very good thing. But if you go through disruption, there seem to me 3 things that you need to bear in mind. You need to do so in the context of a rule of law and strong international institutions. That allows you to transition while retaining the heart of the reassurance that there is stability in the international system that allows change to happen. The second is that when you have a transition, there are many people who thrive and do well in it. But there are always people who do not thrive and do not do well. So to have an effective transition, you need to make sure that you have policies and actions in place that you leave no one behind, so that you don't want a transition which widens inequality. And the third, if you're designing your transition, is put young people at the very heart of the way you do that transition, because young people and what they think has this funny habit of becoming government policy in about 20 or 30 years' time. And if you're looking for a long-term strategy, bringing young people into it right early on is a very, very intelligent way to go forward. And so what we as the 52 have been doing over the last year, and we now have 100 more days to get this right, is to get those 3 approaches, those principles right, in order that we can transition the Commonwealth from the creature of the 20th century to the creature of the 21st century. And my fundamental answer to your original question, Manoj, is it possible to do that, is a resounding yes.
Thank you very much, Tim, for those remarks. I'd like now to call upon His Excellency Premdut Koonjoo to make some... Up to you, whatever you're comfortable with.
The chairperson of the panel, members of the panel, especially had the opportunity to meet Tim in the morning, and we had a very nice conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, let me first of all avail myself of this opportunity to congratulate the Republic of India for organizing such a huge and important conference concerning the changes that are taking place in the world everywhere, and especially in the Indian Ocean. We know that changes takes place in our mind, in our environment, and so many changes we have to adapt ourselves. For example, this Commonwealth Association has been there for many years, and changes have taken place. We are going to meet again in April in UK, and I believe that we'll find new avenues. Changes should be taken, I believe that it should be taken in the sense that it helps people. It helps mankind to move ahead in all types of affairs, in the life of the people, in the manner of thinking, and so far they give satisfaction to the people, to the population, to mankind. I believe that it is welcome that changes takes place. I, for one, am responsible for the new ministry in Mauritius, which is about the sea, about the ocean, and how much you can derive from the ocean, what we can make most of from the ocean. I believe that in the future lies rather in the ocean. The earth, the world has been treated in the past very cruelly, not only about pollution, but the way that wars have been fought on earth, countries have been destroyed and still being destroyed in different parts of the world. I believe that mankind, we have done a lot of harm to the Mother Earth. And my humble prayer is that we should not do the same thing with the ocean. Ocean also is, in a way, our mother, feeding us, keeping the balance of the planet. And the funny thing, important thing is that just like God has made the body of human being, where we have got 3/4 or 2/3, if not, of our bodies is made of water, liquid, and only 1/4 or 1/3 with bones and other things. Just like the planet that God has given to us, there too we have got 3/4 of water, 2/3 of water, if not, and the rest is about the soil. So we should respect the nature. This is very, very important. I believe that in the modern world, every house, every parent, every teacher, every person who is at the head of a country, it has to inculcate this respect among our children. We have to respect not only our brothers, our neighbors, but especially the place where we are living. I'll just cast a few things about the Commonwealth. And for me, it is naturally a great honor to address you tonight in the context of the 3rd edition of the Raisina Dialogue. And the theme is today, Reimagining the Commonwealth. An institution that has been, I said in the beginning, it is there since many years, adapting to changes and creating new things. I believe that that is dynamic for the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is taking progressive steps across the 52 members to mitigate climate change, such as the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub, and also the forthcoming Commonwealth Blue Charter which will enable countries to develop their objectives more sustainably. This word sustainable has become at the top of all dictionary. We have to live in a sustainable manner. We have to look at the sea in a sustainable manner. We have to do everything in a very sustainable manner, and believe that this is the mantra of the future. As a small developing state, Mauritius is highly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change. And I must say that the Commonwealth in the past and even now, they are very, very conscious about the changes taking place in the world, and they have been always helping the member states, 52 member states, that they are always helping and finding solutions. We appreciate that the issue of climate change and the challenges facing small island developing states like Mauritius are being addressed on a priority basis, especially as 25 common member states are SEEDs. We need to ensure that we get the required financial resources and technological know-how so that appropriate climate change adaptation and mitigation measures are initiated to ensure the countries attain their sustainable development objectives. We therefore support the initiatives of the Commonwealth on climate change, which includes the Climate Finance Access Hub that has been set up in Mauritius to help countries across millions pledged by the international community for climate actions. Oceans are of utmost importance to all small island developing states. Mauritius is determined to make of the ocean economy a new economic pillar in the ocean, where we want to maximize on the wealth and also wealth creation from the sea, from the ocean, and growth, and naturally also job creation for our young population. The Commonwealth Blue Charter initiative for sustainable ocean development was introduced at the UN Ocean Conference in June 2017. The Commonwealth Secretary General put forward the initiative as a way of helping Commonwealth member states to ensure maritime industries and rather maritime industries are managed in a way that preserves and promotes ocean wealth. The Blue Charter would apply to ocean governance in the 16 principles and values of Commonwealth Charter, including environmental protection, good governance, justice and peace, human rights and gender equality, and recognition of the needs of a vulnerable nation and young people. It will also help countries to develop an integrated approach to the building of the blue economy. I understand that the Commonwealth of head of the government meeting in April this year, not April, but I think May, April. In April this year, among others, will discuss trading relationships to help to unlock economic growth and prosperity across the Commonwealth states. Dear friends, besides a high-level policy paper circulated by the Commonwealth Secretariat includes pertinent issues pertaining to trade, investment, ocean climate change, and sustainable development, which also figure prominently in the Vision 2030. I'm sure that all the member countries belonging to this important association will put their heart and their mind and all their energy to find new solutions to new problems, and I wish that the friendship among the member states will go stronger and stronger, and the outlook will be always focused in the well-being of mankind. I wish the Commonwealth plenty of success, and I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those very wise words. Swapan Dasgupta, wherever.
Thank you, Manoj. It's always very daunting to speak in the middle of a dinner, ongoing dinner, and especially if it's something as weighty as the Commonwealth. In fact, any allusion to the Commonwealth often reminds me of what Mahatma Gandhi, in one of his visits to London, was asked, "What do you think of European civilization?" And his answer was, "I think it would be a good idea." So the Commonwealth often invokes such a response. I think some of us would remember Commonwealth more in terms of the times when, during cricket matches, when a particular test team failed to turn up, they would somehow muster a Commonwealth 11 and get them to play. Or some of us could remember the times when the immigration signs in Heathrow still had a separate counter for the Commonwealth. But alas, those are long gone. I think when we are talking about reimagining the Commonwealth, I think it would be instructive to find out what exactly the Commonwealth stood for in all these years since its inception as a modern body in 1948, I think, or 1949. I think the first point about which really defined the Commonwealth was a sense of shared history. Now, translated into less polite language, that would mean everybody who had a sense of the empire, or colonialism, that some would say. Secondly, there was always the unifying bond, which again stemmed from that, of the English language, which was again a big binding factor. The third, which was a little more contentious and was often observed more in violation, was the importance attached to the rule of law and democracy. And I think the term democracy became a bit archaic in the first few years of the Commonwealth when some of the post-colonial societies decided to dispense with it altogether. But again, it acquired a certain momentary flavor during the battle against apartheid in South Africa, when the Commonwealth really took a very, very major initiative. But I think it was the fourth issue which really defined to a very large extent, and I know I'm being a little contentious here as to what exactly the Commonwealth stood for. It was really the fourth issue which was very important. And it was, for the want of anything else, the role of the mother country, the notion of the mother country. And I think there was a certain proprietorship which the United Kingdom had of the Commonwealth. When the Honorable Foreign Minister of Bangladesh spoke about the importance of Brexit, which again Tim repeated at some point, I think it's important to realize that what we are talking about, Brexit, at one level could be called an internal development of the United Kingdom. But the fact that we bring it in our thing of the Commonwealth also suggests that it's that notion of the sole or the preeminence of the United Kingdom in the Commonwealth, which drove it in its initial years, but which was also resulted in why we need to reimagine it. That there comes a time when a certain idea loses its momentum. Some of you might recall when the UK joined as it was then called, the European Economic Community in the 70s, the editorials which were written in the Australian papers, which lamented how Australia had been left, bereft, and how it had been left to fend for itself, and it must rediscover, it must now imagine itself in something different. Now, I think it's why suddenly the momentum for the reimagining of the Commonwealth has acquired momentum is because of Brexit. Now, it's true, but that also underlines why we need to move a little bit away from that whole issue. Whether the UK stays in the European Customs Union, whether it stays, which has a harder Brexit or whatever, well, some of the very interesting debates which are going on there is interesting in one way. But if the Commonwealth is to acquire a validity, it must not be merely because we need to resolve the question of the succession to who is going to be the head of the Commonwealth in the very near future, important as the question may be. But more important, who will play the preeminent role, who will be the driving force of the Commonwealth? Can it be the United Kingdom by itself as it was in the 60s and 70s? Or must it be a larger gathering of forces in which India must play a role, in which Canada must play a role, South Africa must play a role, Bangladesh must play a role, Australia must play a role? Not to mention many of the smaller African countries, or Mauritius, which has very legitimate concerns. So I think the importance of the CHOGM summit and of the reimagining of the Commonwealth really lies in the fact that how do we change, how do we shift the center of gravity as far as how the Commonwealth's working is? Is it too much a UK-centric organization, or is it perceived too much as a UK-centric organization? And is the UK, now in a mood of greater magnanimity post-Brexit, actually willing to eschew, devolve greater powers? Should we think about how the Commonwealth Secretariat need not only be a London-based organization? Can it be split depending on functions to other parts of the globe? Some in South Asia, some in Africa, some in Australia or New Zealand, or some even in one of the West Indian states. So these are some of the questions. The question of the 6 billion trade, intra-Commonwealth trade, which Mahmood spoke about very highly, is a very interesting figure, but it's important to recognize that it didn't happen because of the Commonwealth. It happened despite the Commonwealth. And therefore, if we are to put some meaning, if we are to add some heft into what Commonwealth stands for in the 21st century, reimagine it, we need a fundamental reimagination of the very basic contours of what has shaped it. I hope this would constitute one of the facets of the discussions at the summit, or the CHOGM as it's called, in April. And I think it will be a work in progress. It may not happen instantly, overnight. But I think if the Commonwealth is to acquire the meaning, that sense of devolved proprietorship is very important. And I believe that India, which initially took a very important step in defining what the Commonwealth was in 1948, will play a very important part in that reconstitution and reimagination of the Commonwealth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Swapan, for those witty and incisive words, and thank you also for stealing the 5 or 6 questions I wanted to ask. but you've set the scene very nicely. Last but certainly not least, Gay, if you could give us your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to be part of the panel. I think the point that the Commonwealth remains influential and relevant among its members cannot be disputed. I am a Commonwealth scholar, and I benefited from the Commonwealth, and therefore I can give evidence to that. But as we're thinking about the Commonwealth in the 21st century, I would like to raise a few issues. First, the majority of the members of the Commonwealth are African countries. Of course, they start being predominantly their shared heritage as former colonies of Britain. We now have new members, for example, Rwanda and Mozambique, that do not necessarily share that heritage. And therefore, as we're thinking about moving forward, we have to rethink about the basis for the Commonwealth. Beyond the shared heritage, we already have the disruptions that have been brought in by the admission of Rwanda and Mozambique into the Commonwealth. Secondly, the Commonwealth is founded on a number of values. One of the values is on equality among members, regardless of size and wealth. The reality is, however, different. Most of the member states, especially the African countries, are poor and some of them weak, very dependent on Britain, and as has already been alluded to. And therefore, arguably, there is no genuine balance of power within the Commonwealth. And therefore, as we are rethinking the Commonwealth in the 21st century, we have to think of how we can balance this power. Some of the ideas, those that have already started coming in. Other values relate to democracy, human rights, gender equality, rule of law, and good governance. Very solid values. However, when you look at the reality on the ground, member states are at different levels of democratization. And further, the different levels of the adherence to these values vary a lot. And therefore, we have inevitable tensions within the Commonwealth. And how we deal with these tensions will also guide on how we move forward in the 21st century. We know that the Commonwealth has played an important role using its soft power, soft sanctions. We have had examples of the suspension of Zimbabwe from the Commonwealth, the boycott of South Africa during the apartheid era. The question remains, how can the Commonwealth be effective? Effective within itself and outside. And therefore, the question we are asking today about recentering itself, how? And maybe the other question could also be, should it be recentering or decentering? The question is inevitable because partly the point that has just been made about Britain and Brexit. Britain now is talking about being a global Britain, and therefore inevitably it will be expanding its influence beyond most of its other groupings. At the same time, we have countries like India that are repositioning within the Commonwealth. Our moderator will talk more probably about the Commonwealth 2.0 and what it means. But basically the point is we have Britain becoming global after Brexit, I hope, and then other countries repositioning within the Commonwealth. And therefore, how is the power shifting within the Commonwealth? How will this shifting of power affect the weaker countries, like those of Africa? And within that, we're saying that we have the Commonwealth asking these questions within itself. And if you look at the Strategic Plan 2018, there's a lot of re-envisioning of the Commonwealth, a lot of focus focus from the many, many programs that they've had, reducing the numbers from 147 programs to 22 to 17. What are the implications of this refocusing and revisioning of the Commonwealth, especially with regard to the weaker, vulnerable countries within the Commonwealth? And then the expansion plan that it has started, bringing in Rwanda, Mozambique, raises questions with regard to the core value of a shared understanding and agreement on norms and normative issues within the Commonwealth. We should therefore be asking ourselves, to what extent will we be able to maintain that shared understanding, agreement of the normative issues? How are we going to negotiate that normative framework? And lastly, it will be very important that we rethink the incentives and the disincentives within the Commonwealth, and especially as it affects the African countries. Member states will have to indeed reposition themselves and support, not sure whether it's a recentering or decentering of the Commonwealth within in the 21st century. What will determine the level of support as we recast and recenter the Commonwealth? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gay. I'll come back to the recentering or decentering comment that you made in a few moments, but I thought I'd bring in Tim again and ask him to respond to the B question, that's the Brexit question. And I guess there will be cynics, maybe a fair amount of cynics who'd say that Britain's enthusiasm is a renewed enthusiasm following the Brexit vote last year. So I guess my question is, how committed, given the vantage point that you have, you're right in the hub of all of this, how committed is the UK to listening to the views of other member states? And more importantly, how far is it willing to go to reform the Commonwealth in some of the ways that have just been mentioned?
Thanks, Manoj. There's a very odd difference between clearly what is felt out there, which is this idea of the UK as a mother country and being in charge, and the lived experience day to day of working on the Commonwealth, when it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels to me that that idea of mother country is part of that 20th century view of what it was about, which is now not at all relevant to where we find ourselves. And I think that there is an opportunity that the UK was going to grab from the moment David Cameron was asked if instead of Vanuatu, which had suffered this major storm back in 2015, instead of Vanuatu, would the UK host? And he said yes. And from the moment he said that, the UK was bound to spend the next 3 years and then the 2 years of the chair in office taking more seriously the question of how do you reposition the Commonwealth in the 21st century? Because whether or not the vote on Brexit went one way or the other, we were going to have to host it and we were going to spend time considering it. So I think the Brexit point is a little bit of a distraction. I would just pick up on, but I think this is what makes it a very interesting period, and where it's a genuine shift, because what happens to the Commonwealth in the future does not depend upon what Britain does or does not itself choose. We remain committed, we will be still active in the Commonwealth. It really depends upon what other member states want the Commonwealth to do. And if we find that Mauritius and Malawi and India and St. Vincent and the Grenadines decide that they want to grab the Commonwealth and make something of it, image it in the way they wish, that is how the Commonwealth will evolve. Whereas if people keep on saying, it's up to the Brits, and do they want to or don't they want to, it will never make an effective change because we're not in that era anymore. So I think there's a real opportunity. It's an opportunity that I think India sees, but it's an opportunity that a number of member states see, And certainly over the last year as I've gone round, I've found an increasing number of member states realizing that this is their choice. It's up to them whether something comes of this. It's up to Mauritius whether we have a really effective blue charter that improves the livelihoods of people living in Mauritius. It's not up to another power somewhere.
Thank you very much, Tim. Gay, you mentioned that wonderful phrase or that question, whether it's recentering or decentering, and I've heard several times over the last few months talk about the decentralization of the Commonwealth. Its secretariat currently is in Marlborough House, and a lot of the functioning is in Marlborough House. What does a decentralized Commonwealth look like to you? And where do you see the opportunities for Malawi and I guess the broader African continent in this time of transition?
Thank you. I think part of it is what has already been suggested. If you think about the Commonwealth and the Secretariat that it's housed in London, we're saying that if we decentralize, we're talking about opportunities of having the Commonwealth spread in its other member states. If you think about the cultural exchanges, the Commonwealth scholarships, predominantly it's Africans going to UK, Australia, Canada. You don't have much of exchange from the north to the south. And therefore, a decentered Commonwealth, you'd think that there will be a lot more exchange. Of course, Africans, we benefit a lot when we visit the UK and the other places. But then at the same time, you notice that with the, for example, the split site program that we now have within the Commonwealth, it helps a lot to be grounded within your home and for us to start building capacities within Africa, for us to be able to offer master's programs, PhD programs, and therefore we could benefit from lecturers, for example, coming from the UK to Africa. They will be able to influence, to share knowledge with a lot more people than probably having Africans going to the UK.
Okay. Thank you. Your Excellency, I guess a similar question to you, but does Mauritius feel ownership of the Commonwealth? And if so, what does leadership of the Commonwealth mean to an ocean state like Mauritius?
It's good to know that UK has been, as a country of the Commonwealth, a member of Commonwealth, always helping Mauritius and similar seeds country so far. Help is concerned to train people in the aquatic sector. We must be honest to say that in the past we have been helped by technicians and also by people who have got a better knowledge than us about the ocean. And I must confess that it is for the first time that Mauritius, we have got a ministry looking after the ocean. And I believe that by grace, we have got a very huge amount of ocean in our share. It is almost about the size of the whole Europe. 2.3 square million square kilometers is a huge amount of ocean. And I believe that there will lie the future of Mauritius. Okay, that's why we are determined to make it a future pillar of economy. And to be frank, I say it again that we have been helped from different parts. For example, we have got a meeting with Australia, you have got meeting with Scotland, you have got meeting with African countries, with India, so many parts of the world, they are helping Mauritius to develop our ocean. And we want to make it really, as I said, a pillar in the future. So we are grateful. But I believe that this friendship that you have got in the Commonwealth and other many other associations, the friendship should be cemented with faith, with confidence, and also with love. If you don't have the respect of your neighbor, you don't have respect of other religions, of other people, other community, this is very, very important for the world to develop peacefully. And if there is always hatred, there is always mischief, you don't have the confidence of your neighbor, you don't have the confidence of other community, life will become tough. And the more we move towards development, the more we move towards money, the more greedy we become, less will be the progress we can make in the world. I sincerely believe that there should be a sort of friendship between all the religion in the world, between all the people in different color. Okay, we have to move in the same direction, and I pray that in the future we should fill the heart of people with love, love and love, where there is no single place for hatred and jealousy.
Thank you. Before I open it up to the floor, Swapan, one question for you. You know, you've been a very keen observer of Indian foreign policy and India's outreach over the years, and especially in the last 3 or 4 years with Prime Minister Modi, who has given an unprecedented focus to foreign policy and engagement. India is, of course, a member, but now an increasingly important player at many multilateral forums. So my question to you is, what is or what could make the Commonwealth unique and really useful for India's economic and strategic ambitions?
Yeah, let me first come to a point which Tim mentioned, and I think it's a bit reassuring that he informed us that the Commonwealth as it stands to today is like a piece of plasticine. You can mold it in any way you want to, and it really depends on your will to mold it. Now, there have been a lot of ideas which have been preferred in this context. For instance, there is one of the old dominion powers, should I say, who want Commonwealth to be a sort of aggregation of values. Now that, to my mind, while it's good to be the pulpit of the world, I don't think it's very satisfying and it's very productive in any meaningful sense. Now, if it is to be an economic body, if the principal purpose of, along with the good works, if it's going to move to certain economic dimension, what exactly is it going to be? Is it going to be a variation? Can we today talk about a variation of the old-fashioned 19th century version of imperial preference? It's a thought. I mean, no one likes to trace the ancestry of it, but that's a thought that comes into mind. Can we talk about professional aggregation? So I think a lot of it really will depend. As far as India is concerned, India has been looking for multilateral bodies. Here is a ready-made club, and I'm talking here purely from the Indian perspective. Here is a ready-made club. A club where perhaps members didn't come too often, but a club all the same, with great premises, with lovely facilities, and an interesting pedigree. Now, if you are going to be the driving force of that club, what are the things you want to do? One is you establish your claim on a larger multilateral forum, number one. And secondly, the point which is the question of the proverbial elephant in Asia. Are we going to be putting forward another multilateral forum? Are we going to be an important player in a multilateral forum that somehow offsets, not in a very significant way, but in a small but meaningful way, the influence which China has in Africa, in parts of the Caribbean? That's the role, I think, India has to really explore. And I think one of the great features of the Modi foreign policy is that for the first time, we are looking not only outwards in a preachy way, we are looking outwards for a sense of economic fulfillment of ourselves. So India is really positioning itself, building the foreign policy capacity to work out a system where our economic base is even more robust than what it is now. And to that extent, the Commonwealth fits into India's notion of self-interest.
Thank you, Swapan. We've got time for 2, maybe 3 questions. So, anybody? Yes, Cross. Do you want to try and head towards a mic so that we capture you on the audio feed as well?
Hello, panelists. Thank you for having this and allowing question. I just wanted to ask, like, in this time where all the powers, the regional power, basically, if you talk about the Southeast Asia, are emerging economically. So, like, how does the psychological aspect or the vote bank politics affect the development? Does it matter at all? And the second thing, there are certain things has been prospering, is booming, like, for example, IT in India, but in the rest of the South Asian part, in Pakistan, Bangladesh, there is no such IT hubs is emerging. This is why. I have basically these 2 questions.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I want to take them together. Yes, go on. And I'll take one more question and I'll leave the panelists to field them.
Good evening. My name is Tirthanka Goyal. In the past, I was working with the French government selling the nuclear reactors. So I've been based out in Paris, working France, Germany, UK, and India, bringing the investment to India from Europe. So my question is, in terms of the economic prospects, in order for this Commonwealth to make it successful, according to me, it is not working. That's what we have been discussing in Paris. So in order to be successful in the economic terms, what are the different sectors on which the Commonwealth countries can contribute in economic terms, in terms of financing, sharing of technology, sharing of information? Thank you very much.
Okay. Anybody else? One final question? Okay, so I guess a couple of different sorts of questions. So who wants to have a go at them? Tim?
Shall I try? I ought to correct some of the figures around trade. The actual figures for intra-Commonwealth trade is $800 billion at the moment, projected to reach $1 trillion in 2 years or so. And so I'm not sure I recognize the description of prosperity arrangements that isn't quite working, and the economic analysis done by experts suggests that it's 19% easier to trade between Commonwealth countries because of the lack of need to interpret and common law, etc. So I think there are advantages. There are so many different sectors we could look at particularly, but the one I would highlight is the way in which developed countries can help those countries exposed to natural disasters, particularly ocean-based disasters, in terms of resilience, in terms of access to climate finance. There's a lot of insurance skills. There are skills in this that lie in Singapore, in the UK and other places, which are absolutely vital to the prosperity of some of our smallest member states, but somehow we haven't quite connected them effectively enough. And one of the aims, certainly, of the London Summit Week is to spend 3 days, for some of us in the city, looking at ways some of those service industries can help the resilience, economic resilience, of some of our weakest members.
Okay. We've run out of time now, so in 30 seconds I'm going to ask a very simple question. What are you expecting from the Commonwealth Summit in April? What's the one big thing that you would expect as a result of the summit in April? And Tim, right at the end, what can we expect that's new, that's big, that's different from the Commonwealth Summit? Okay, do you want to start off?
A more effective and efficient Commonwealth. As I said, looking at their strategic plan now, I think that's the vision. And therefore, I'm hoping that that's what will be taken forward at the summit. Thank you.
Minister?
Yes. Well, I believe that we are looking forward for strengthening the Commonwealth and expecting that economically there will be more help and more processes for other nations, especially SEEDS countries, small island developing states, where they can make ahead about the economic development. But I must stress again that it's not only wealth, not because we were in the Commonwealth, okay? It's not only wealth, economy, money, which is important for the globe, for the nation, for mankind to move ahead. We must have some sort of respect, some sort of philosophy in life. Today, the world is missing these things, and I believe that even there, we can have some guidance for a nation to move ahead, for the world to move ahead. Thank you.
Swapan?
Well, I'll speak specifically from India's point of view. I think it would be fair to say that since Jawaharlal Nehru, most Indian prime ministers have taken a significantly disinterested view of the Commonwealth. Nehru was a bit of an Anglophile. Mr. Modi is not. But I think that Mr. Modi has a greater interest in multilateral forums is quite evident, and I think the Commonwealth is no exception. So regardless of the background, I expect India to put forward a far more robust and creative intervention in this Commonwealth Summit than we've seen for a long time. And I think India's added economic weight will actually significantly enhance the quality of that.
Thank you. And the last word, Tim.
So I certainly hope that that will happen. I have reason to think that is going to be the case. It will depend on the 52, but I think we will have major initiatives on business and prosperity, major intellectual leadership on oceans, and major steps forward on our cybersecurity. So those are the three that I would pick as headlines I would predict.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody. Please give a big round of applause to our panelists.